Okay, so I met my first wife when I was 19. I was 18 actually. We got married at 19. She was 1 year younger than me. I was brought up in a strict Christian family, so I was quite naive to the way of the world and things. Our marriage was quite dysfunctional with my first wife. Because unbeknownst to me, I'd never been told about this by her, but she'd had some problems with abuse from her father during her younger years, very younger years, probably from 5 years old up until when I met her. Once we started to date and moved in together, that stopped, but that had caused a real problem with my first wife, mentally and emotionally. She ended up taking her father she went to the police about the matter, and it went to court. And during this time also, she fell pregnant with my daughter, who's now 33. Our marriage did break up due to a lot of reasons, but my ex-wife was also, she tried to commit suicide probably about 15, 20 times, which I tried to help her through as best as I could, but I wasn't really equipped. I'd got no idea what really, was going on in her mind, or how things would work out. But during this time, my parents actually took on the raising of my daughter from when she was probably 6 months to 9 months old, and they consequently, with my help, raised her up to adulthood. She's now doing quite successfully, works in a hospital, doing a good job, so things seem to have worked out pretty well for her. But she's she's reasonably well adjusted, considering she doesn't have anything to do with her mother. Her mother remarried a couple of times and now lives somewhere over east. We're not really sure where. Me and my daughter get along okay. See each other on a regular basis, not as well as I would hope, but I think because she was probably quite independent growing up due to the circumstances. But when we do see each other, we get along really well. I've got a grandson too, via her. He's now 6 years old. So that was that marriage, and all the aftermath, the court cases, everything probably dragged on until I was 26, 27, could even have been as late as 28. I then met my second wife when I was 29. She was 13 years, she was 17 when I met her. We had a good connection. We met in Bali. Nothing happened, I just talked to her by the pool a few times, and we might have met out shopping once or something like that, but nothing, we didn't really form any attachment or anything. She actually pursued me, because we both knew we were both from Perth. She pursued me when we both came back to Perth. She actually found my address out from the hotel in Bali, wrote to me, so I contacted her back, and we started to see each other and date, and then things moved along very quickly into quite a heavy romance. But the romance, I think, or the relationship always meant more to her than it did to me, because I wasn't really over all the dramas and emotional stuff from the first marriage. So I would say I was only 60 or 70% connected to the relationship, whereas with her it was everything in her life. We had a son in 1994, when I was 32, and then a second son in 98 1998. Those two sons now are 25 and 21. As I think my wife matured and she was into her mid-20s, I think her feelings towards me changed, and then she started to resent the fact that, according to her, the best years of her life she'd wasted on me. Whereas, from my perspective, I did try and escape or close the relationship down, but she just wouldn't accept it. But anyway, consequently, in '99, when my sons were 4.5 and 1.5, we separated for the first time. We then got back together again in late '99, early 2000, and that was when I think I first realised that she was she just got back together for a period of time to gain some sort of revenge on what she perceived I'd done wrong to her. So it was obvious to me that the reunion wasn't going to work, and I eventually just either gave up or was kicked out. I forget which the case was, but I just moved out with a friend, basically slept on the floor at his house, and then I started going through the family court and the child support agency. As things started to deteriorate, my wife got more and more unreasonable in her demands. She knew what had happened was I'd probably about 1997, I'd started doing some importing of different products from overseas, and I'd worked hard. I started off with nothing, basically. Didn't even really know what I was doing, but I learned quickly, started to build up a reasonably successful business. But it wasn't really paying a lot, but I was getting there. The potential was there. I could see that if I kept at it and was able to, do things in a logical way, I think I would have built it to quite a successful business. My wife knew all this, of course, but after we'd separated, I was really, struggling financially and emotionally, because, I was basically went from being with my kids 24/7. I was the main caregiver up until that time. Suddenly I was, I think I was only seeing them like one day a week, previous to the family court becoming involved. My wife then started to demand more and more money, which she knew and I knew I didn't have. I was trying to keep the business afloat and build it up and at least, improve not only my own situation but my son's situation. I had no problem with trying to help, and pay my way as far as their needs and upbringing, but the situation was that the business wasn't making enough money, really, not even to support myself. So anyway, my ex-wife got more and more irate, and she demanded that I pay more, and I couldn't do that. So we went to the child support agency, got involved on her instigation. The first time I went into the child support agency, I took all my book work for the previous couple of years, and I saw the actual, the main lady who was in charge of child support at birth. I had a one-on-one meeting with her, and from the moment I stepped in through the door, I just got the feeling that number one, she didn't particularly like men, and secondly, it didn't matter what I do or what evidence I gave her, it wasn't really going to be listened to or taken into consideration. So basically what this lady said to me was, "Oh Brian, I see you've claimed travel to Indonesia under your expenses." And I said, "Well, yeah, because I'm an import company, I'm an import business. I have to travel to Indonesia to buy stock and bring here and distribute. So therefore, that's a legitimate expense." And she says, "No, that's no good. You can't use that as an expense." I said, "Well, how can I run my business then?" She said, "I just buy it online." So this was in 1999, 2000, when I didn't really know my way around the internet then, and also, as I pointed out to her, if I tried to buy anything over the internet, either I'd lose my money or I'd just get very shoddy merchandise sent to me. But there was just a complete lack of fairness or reasonableness from this lady, and in subsequent correspondence or phone calls, it was basically obvious that there was no chance my business was going to survive if I couldn't use these legitimate expenses to keep my business running. Also, during this time, my ex-wife was more and more vindictive. It seemed like she felt like she wanted to punish me for the 10 years I'd supposedly stolen from her, for not being the husband that she thought that she deserved or was entitled to. She started to disparage my parenting skills, the way I looked after my children, which up until that time there'd been no problem with. She actually was an aerobics instructor while we were living together, while we were in the marriage. So she was often from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 9 o'clock at night, she would be taking aerobics lessons at the gym. So I basically raised my sons pretty much 100% alone, as far as the caregiving and organising them, cooking them dinner, bathing them, reading them stories before going to bed, etc. But according to her, I've done a terrible job, and etc., etc. She then started to make it difficult to see my sons. That I'd turn up for pre-arranged visitation, and she'd be driving up the road, obviously haven't seen me, and she'd have the boys in the car with her, and she'd be gone. She wouldn't answer the phone when I rang her up to try and work out what was going on. Basically just that type of modus operandi. She would make everything as difficult as possible for me to be able to see my sons or have any sort of a normal sort of relationship with them. It was difficult as well. I was living on my friend's house in a bed on the floor. When I had them over, I couldn't afford to get my own place. So she knew exactly how tough I was doing it, and she knows that I can live, or I can squeeze every last bit out of what money I do get coming. I'm very good at making the most out of a situation, but I just couldn't do any better than what I was doing. And things got progressively worse. She got more and more spiteful and vindictive. We had some arrangements put in place as far as visitation, which she then proceeded to break at every opportunity. It got into the stage where every time she'd break an arrangement, I would then immediately have court papers served on her. I'd turn up for the court case, she wouldn't turn up. For the breach of visitation, she wouldn't bother turning up. So then I'd then serve her another order. She then probably wouldn't turn up, or maybe she would. Sometimes she'd just come in there and refuse to answer questions. Sometimes she'd just sit and basically smirk and laugh through the whole proceedings, because she knew that no matter what, nothing really bad was ever going to happen to her as far as consequences for her breaching orders. And I got that impression from sitting and watching other court cases before and after mine, where all the females seem to realise that basically it was a game that they just couldn't lose. You know, it was a no-lose situation for them. Things continued to get nastier and nastier between us, and eventually one day, it was probably around about 2002, mid-2002, and she said to me, "Brian, I'm telling you now, you will never ever have a relationship with my boys." She said that, my boys, not our boys or our sons or our kids, it was my boys. I tell you now, I'm going to give you 3 options. I'm either going to send you to the mental hospital, I'm either going to send you out of the country, or I'm going to send you to your grave. It's going to be one of those 3. And you know me, I won't stop until I do one of those things. And I sat down and I thought about that, and I thought about my experiences of going through the child support, through the family court. There was absolutely no way, didn't matter how resourceful I was, how determined, how much I tried to talk sense into my ex-wife, saying that, you know, I'm a good dad, you know, I love them to death, and I will always do the right thing by them. Didn't matter what I tried to do, I wasn't going to win. So mid-2003, after a final court case over breach of visitation, my lawyer, I self-represented most of the time up to this point, but my lawyer, because it got a little bit too complex for me, I'd asked help from a lady lawyer, and I remember she stood up to speak to the judge and she says, "Your Honour, I'm doing pro bono in this case," which was news to me. It was nice, welcome news. So she was doing it for free for me. She didn't charge me. And she says, "There's something wrong with the system where a perfectly reasonable father who only wants to see his children is being stopped from doing that by a vindictive ex." These were her words. I don't remember the judge's response, but she was basically saying, "I can't keep doing pro bono work for him, but this is my time where I'm doing this for him to try and get some sort of fairness." Unfortunately, this also was not successful. She then continued, my ex-wife then continued after that to continue to breach court orders, to be vindictive. She was dropping poison in my son's ears as well, putting me down. My parents didn't get to see my son's cousins, uncle, auntie. The whole of my side of the family was alienated from the boys. And after that episode in the family court with my lawyer saying about the pro bono and not being able to do it anymore, I sat down and went through what had happened over the preceding 3.5 years, and just came to the realisation that it's better off for all concerned, my sons, myself, and in a way my ex-wife, if I just removed myself from the situation, because it was just, I could see if I didn't leave, then it was going to be one of 2 options: mental hospital or commit suicide. So I went over and worked overseas as an ESL teacher, and ended up staying overseas for a significant amount of time, best part of from 2003, and then 2012 I came back. In those intervening years, I every time I would come back to Perth, usually at Christmas holidays, I'd attempt to see the children. I turned up at my ex-wife's house to try and beg her to let me see them, and she told me to get off the property, otherwise she'd call the police. I didn't get to see my sons. There was 2 occasions where, due to her current partner, intervening on my behalf, saying that, you know, it's only fair that I was able to see my own sons. You know, it's not good to break the relationship between a father and his sons. Due to his help, I was able to see my sons on 2 occasions, once in Bali and once in Fremantle. But I think the damage had been done, which I consequently found out from that person who'd tried to advocate on my behalf. He was living with her, and he said he subsequently told me that on at least once a day, she would go into a meltdown and tell my sons about how I was deadbeat, how I was useless, I was terrible, I was bad news to have around. They're better off without me in their life. Everything that comes out of my mouth is a lie. This kind of thing, you know, just a general character assassination of me. So those meetings, those 2 meetings we had, were not really satisfying. I don't think the boys were strange with me, and it was hard to have any sort of a real rebuilding of a relationship. It was only a day as well in each of the instances. I think I realised that if I did try much harder to rebuild the relationship, she would then take it upon herself to destroy it anyway. She knew she had the power, that if I got past a certain point in closeness, she managed to push it apart again. So since when I came back to live in Australia in late 2012, I immediately contacted my sons, tried to set up meetings. I met with both of them at different times. For some reason, it was quite okay at the meeting, but then when I tried to make subsequent arrangements, neither of the boys were really keen on doing that, and I'm assuming that was because of my ex-wife getting to them and saying, don't have anything to do with me. It's a weird situation now, is that my ex-wife doesn't speak to her own mother, she doesn't speak to her own sister, she hasn't spoken to them for 10 years, her own mother and her own sister. My eldest son, as far as I know, has distanced himself, his wife and my granddaughter are distanced away from my ex-wife, because they probably can see she's quite a toxic personality. The youngest son kind of leaves home, messes up, then gravitates back and lives with her, because he knows he's always got a house, a place to stay with her. But I wouldn't say it's a brilliant relationship. But from my perspective, no one has come out of this very well at all. My sons are messed up mentally. I've been alienated from my sons, and my ex-wife doesn't seem to get along with anyone. So, you know, no one's come out of this well. But I think one of the main things I've learned through this whole journey is that it seems like men in general do not get a fair shake. It doesn't matter what government department or court system or entity we end up going through. We are always treated as if we're the worst possible example of fatherhood or manhood, and the narrative and the political correctness around the whole system is that men should not be given the benefit of the doubt, and women are held up as if they can do no wrong, even when there's ample evidence that they may be feckless or using drugs or neglecting the children or spending money on themselves rather than the kids. None of that is ever really scrutinised. It's almost as if there's just two standards, one standard for females, one standard for and it's so biased and unfair. The only way I can see forward is for a complete changing of the whole system, so that from a starting point, 50-50 share care, and some sort of a standard amount that a boy or a girl needs to be spent on them to have a reasonable upbringing. So it might be $200-300 a week, say $300 a week. So that is then split halfway. The father and the mother both put in equal amounts. There's no incentive to alienate a parent from either side, because it does happen both ways. It just, at the moment, it's happening, I think, probably 90% of the time it's the father who's being alienated. And I can see the negative effects, of emotional and mental ramifications of this in years to come is going to be enormous. So I think something really needs to be done quickly and in a common sense way, without allowing special interest groups to have a large say in how things work out.